Today's guest is Phillip Pistauer, CEO of Quantum Gaming and an industry expert who understands iGaming from the inside out. In this episode, we cut through the noise around how operators and platforms really work together, why white label solutions aren't always plug and play, and where payments, compliance, and user experience collide. So if you've ever wondered why platforms push back, why operators feel the impact first, or why stability beats features in the long run, this conversation is for you. Phil, welcome to the podcast. This is actually your first time doing a podcast ever. How do you feel?
Very excited, and I'm happy for the opportunity. I don't do a lot of self-promotion, to be honest. I've always had a bit more the philosophy, get something done, and before I'm able to sort of present and talk to it about the world. So it is something, though, with the new role, I think I need to do a little bit more. And I've had lots of people actually approach me and say, like, why don't you post more on LinkedIn? Why don't you talk more at these things? So let's say maybe it's the first step to me being a little bit more exposed to the industry and participating in things like this. I really appreciate the opportunity.
We really appreciate you on the podcast, and I really look forward to our conversation today. I think it's going to be very insightful. But before we get into the technical and operational aspect of the conversation, can you share a little bit about the journey that took you to your current role as the CEO of Quantum Gaming?
Yes, absolutely. I love to start kind of with that topic to give people a bit of context and background as well, like who's Phil, especially given that I've not been so, what I'm doing all the time and just sort of getting stuff done instead of focusing on that aspect of it. But I had a very interesting entry point into the industry. So before I got into iGaming, I was participating in a business with two friends, which was a lot of fun. We were running a bar, we had a nightclub, and we started doing a bit more like digital media stuff. We grew it to a stage that I'm actually very proud of. We made Austrian national television with some of the ads that we shot back in the day. But this was extremely hard work. I'm not afraid of hard work, but we're talking Monday to Sunday, every day, non-stop something, waking up at 5 a.m., charging camera batteries. I mean, I'm sure that Rule is very familiar with this kind of stuff, how hard it can be. I was there, also texting actors and stuff to like come to the set. Where are you? You're late, So I got kind of into a crossroad in my life, and I was thinking like either I continue with this nightlife media business, which is very, very hard. And again, not because it was hard that made me afraid of it. It was just, something that has a bigger picture in the future. It is hard work, this industry. It is hard work. It takes grit. But then I got introduced to, Emma and then Oliver DeBono and Igor and these guys. And I don't remember the chain of events 100%, to be honest. But at some point, Emma texted me, like, I want to talk to you about Quantum. And I didn't know about this quantum gaming platform like at all. And I've known all of the big platform operators out there. So I was sitting and doing a bit of research on quantum computing. So I was like, something with something to do with that, non-binary programming stuff. And I'm like, what's this guy cooking up that wants to talk about quantum? But it was just the name of the platform itself and the business itself. And we were supposed to have like a 15-minute meeting. And I think we ended up speaking for like 2.5, almost 3 hours about my history and what I've done, and how I achieved certain things, how I led the singular platform to scale up and be successful. And I flew to Austria because our CTO is living in Vienna. And a similar story, we're supposed to meet for a coffee, and we ended up walking up and down the streets of Vienna, just speaking for like almost 3-4 hours. And I was really sold on the technology and the architecture that he had in mind. And you really need to have a certain level of abstract thought to understand the concepts behind what he was trying to build and achieve. Because there's a lot of words there which, like, nobody will really understand unless they have the vision for what this could potentially be in the future.
There are so many technicalities in our industry and terminology. So sometimes looking at a bigger picture is actually harder for some people.
It's harder. Often with my team, when we're developing new things, I'm like, let's use our imagination. Because like we don't have something, we're building something that doesn't exist. And they're like looking at me with the deer in the headlights eyes, like, how are we going to do this? I'm like, let's use our imagination. Okay, we want to achieve 1, 2, 3, 4. Where do we start? We start sketching it out. We make boxes on screens, and we with the development, the software development, you're creating something out of nothing. So how do you do that, and how do you get that level of
Exactly, when you're in front of that blank page, what do you do? Where do you start?
It's very daunting. It's very daunting sometimes, and the bigger the room is, the more scary it is. And even myself, more in the singular Flutter kind of days, we had workshops, and I was flying around the world, to London, to here, to there. You're sitting with a room of very senior, very highly paid engineers, and you're like, I hope I don't say the wrong thing.
At the same time, you want to be part of that crowd, of that group.
Yes. And it was, the more I did it, the less scary it became.
Yes.
The less scary it became, because the technology guys, they're very good at their tech. But it's always the business context which is lacking for them. And when I started,
bring it to them.
Yeah. We had this huge office in Cluj, in Romania. And I remember going there, I was sitting with like 20 guys, engineers, and nobody wanted to talk. And again, I've kind of always been that guy where I just put my hand out. Yeah, I was just like, you know what? I'll do it. Hey, you guys, give me the pens. I'm like, okay, what are the ideas? Just tell me something. I'll start drawing. And it was very funny. Like a couple of weeks later, I got an email back from those guys who we were sketching stuff with, and they said, can you send us the architect Phil for the next meeting? And I was like, I'm not a software architect, man. I'm just a guy drawing boxes.
We're doing everything.
A bit like that, it's this philosophy, like, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You really don't. You just have to be able to connect to the right people in the right scenarios and create the right environment for them to thrive. Very often I will kick off a meeting with an idea, and then I leave the room. I'm like, you guys are in here for the next 3-4 hours, and you'll figure it out. And they're all nervous as well, and a little bit of icebreakers, okay, but I come back 3 hours later and I see all of them sketching and discussing, and they're like, Phil, no, we need more time.
Absolutely. To begin with, let's start with the basics. So we have two key actors, two protagonists to our conversation. On one side, we have the platform provider. On the other side, the operator. So can you explain how their relationship works? How do they work together?
Excellent. I kind of always segment it into technology, product, and operations. And those are three different kind of beasts of their own. Technology, we have to make sure that the system is alive, that we are taking in the transactions, that the servers are up, that we are, ensuring that the technical toolbox is available for people in product and operations to be able to manage their kind of business. I like what you said about the relationship, because that's also relationship and communication. And I've never been afraid to go and have a conversation and dig into something with one of our platform operators. And this is very often an area of contention, because something goes bump in the night. I get an SMS from a CEO, and it's like, oh, the website is down. And I'm like, okay, I get myself out of bed. I switch on the computer. I'm checking certain things. I'm like, the servers are up, the website is up. You've got active players, there's active sessions. There's actually not a problem. So
the issue is not always technical. We were talking about it earlier.
Yes, correct. That's when you kind of like dig into like, what is the origin of this issue? Where did it come from? And I've had experiences where it's like literally related to a single person who complained. The problem was misunderstood, and we took the wrong steps to try and resolve it. But showing the operator and having that willingness to do this, I could also tell them no and say like, I'm not getting up, I'm not bothering with this. But like the way I see it is, if it's important to a customer, it's also important to me. And that's how we should conduct ourselves as a business. And I've always been this kind of, teach a man to fish sort of philosophy. So after we resolve the problem, I'll write an incident report, and then I'll also advise on like, guys, next time, please maybe check this, check that, check this.
How do you go about tracing where the problem came from? Do you have specific processes?
You have your typical kind of escalation procedures, and depending on what it is, if you take my scenario that I'm waking up in the night and I'm seeing that something is actually wrong, then I'm starting to call other people.
Yeah.
So then they do need to wake up, and they do need to hit the reset button or do some magic to get our services up and running. But we've been, cautiously optimistic. Our system has been very stable the last several months because we've invested a lot of time into the stability of the system. And the stability of the system also is determined by how we are managing change to the system. When we were speaking earlier, like the CRM systems, for example, people have their preference. I know OptiMove, I know Smartico, I know this.
They want that one tool
Exactly.
that they're used to.
They're one tool that they're used to. And for us, it's not a problem doing the integration work. There is a bit of a cost, there is complexity as well, but I'm always challenging, like, who's going to use it? Because once we set it up, you're going to have an interface with 50,000 different bells and whistles and clicky buttons that you need to press in order to make it run. And maybe a small side note, but I was doing some consultation work, for example, for a company, a Norwegian company, who was doing Unreal Engine real-time rendering for television broadcasting, which is super cool. When I actually tried to, the idea was to bring it to the live casino stuff. And we had several meetings with some operators out there, like, maybe you guys want to use this technology. And one good learning that I took from this experience was that we should have mentioned maybe at the beginning how many people you need to operate this software. And it was like, you need at least 10 people. You need 3 designers, you need 2 guys like this, you need 3 guys like this. And then they were always like, why didn't you guys tell us at the beginning? But my challenge back is like, why didn't you ask either? This isn't a magical, somebody needs to run it, you know?
What kind of advice do you have about white label casinos, and how should brands use that properly?
There was an interesting shift in the whole industry, I'd say, the last 5 to 10 years. Like, platforms at the very beginning were more rare. There was like BetConstruct, there was the old micro gaming casinos, there was Every Matrix, for example, which I had a very long relationship with those guys. But you've seen more and more platforms pop up left, right, and center. And I know this as a fact because I've advised a lot of these smaller platforms on certain aspects of their business because they don't understand how to handle certain scenarios. You know, that's the crux of it, really, because you're getting a copy-paste template brand from this casino provider, but it kind of like just hopping back a little bit, it goes into like, what are you trying to achieve? And if somebody comes to me and they're like, I want a white label casino because I want a lot of money, I'm like, you need a little bit more.
What's your vision?
What's your vision? What's your goal? How do you want to treat the players? Do you want to have high volatility? Do you want to have a huge risk appetite? Do you want to run a penny casino? Do you need, all of these things? I spend also a lot of time with customers' requirements capturing before we even accept and do a project, because I want to be clear that we're all on the same page. And for me, if I invest an hour or 2 into that conversation and we don't close the business, it's okay. It's okay, because I don't really feel like we were going to be on the same page anyways in the long term. But if you speak to those customers who tell you, we want to enter this market, our strategy is this, we would like to position the site like that, I'm like, brilliant, that's what we can help you with.
What's a realistic budget to open an online casino?
It's not so much about, I would say, a setup fee. And I think this is what a lot of people get wrong. They think, for 50K, I'm going to get a casino and then it's just going to print money. That is not the reality of the situation. What we try to determine is, what is your, again, long-term vision and budget? There's this, I always give people this example. You can launch the casino brand. Someone can deposit 10 euros, place 1 bet and win 50,000 euros because he hit a crazy multiplier. What do you do in that scenario? Can you pay him? Do you have enough money for that? Do you have the risk appetite for that? And then that's when people start scratching their heads a bit and saying, hey, maybe we should think about this a little bit more before we get into this business.
So if tomorrow I want to open an online casino, what should be the steps? And in terms of budget, let's say I don't have a big budget, what can I do? What would you advise me?
I would advise to maybe start with advertising, affiliation, something like that first, to get the feel of how the industry works and a feel for how ultimately the technical, the platform, the website, the stability, that's all on our side. We'll take care of that from the platform. But ultimately, the responsibility of the operators is to bring in the players. You need to establish your player base. You need to establish your community.
So you don't need a big budget for the platform. You need a great marketing strategy strategy around it?
Something. Work on that first. See if that works for you. You need to have some sort of a level of understanding of how that industry is working, and a good entry point, I think, is the advertising, the SEO, the affiliation part. If you make it big enough on that part and you've got a good cash flow, your business is running optimally, and you can do some further investments, then maybe it's time to take the further step and actually start your own casino operation. One thing as well to mention as well though is often also neglected is the operational activities required to launch that casino. Because if you're starting off, in my scenario, just doing advertising or whatever affiliation, you can do it with a small team, but then you have customer support, CRM, you've got player life cycle, you've got payments processing, you start to get all of these things, and like, can you afford that staff? Will you do everything yourself?
So you would say that size matters.
Yes. I think, yeah, size matters. That was quite a fun one that we threw around the other day. So why I mentioned that this size matters thing, there are the Bet Constructs of this world. They have a great product. It's a nice platform, but you are one in a sea of 2,000 to 3,000 plus brands that are operating in that market. And what we can offer right now in our size and our scale is that we can offer the advice, expertise in-house to help support the businesses grow, because we understand operational stuff as well as the technical in the background. And then, combining those two things and ensuring that you communicated well to your customers, that's where the kind of magic happens. I'm not under any illusion that we don't have big competition out there.
But when you compare yourself a little bit, what gives Quantum Gaming that edge that others don't have?
The main thing I think is that the platform is only 3-4 years old, something like that. We have the original architects, we have the original dev team, so we're able to move relatively fast in our current environment, and things are changing very quickly with crypto and different game offerings and things like that, and we would like to have the velocity to compete with what comes next, not the older platforms which are established. And I'll explain a little bit the limitation that they have. It's something that it's natural. The bigger that you get and the bigger your application system gets, the less people will understand every part of it and how the connecting bits are all hooked up together. So
and that causes friction.
It causes friction, and it's painful. You suddenly have 1,000 people dev team, which is amazing, but actually getting things done and deploying things and getting ideas across the line, that becomes very challenging.
And I'm thinking about 3 main areas where that happen when they intersect: compliance, user experience, and payments. Mm-hmm. And so for some reason, it's like a Bermuda triangle of platform management. Can you take us through that?
So we always take it a step back, and I think of transactions and systems and scheduling and data and persistent and impersistent data. Those are a lot of like technical words which you're probably like, oh, what's he talking about? But the point I'm trying to make is like, you want to buy a car from us, right? The car, it's the engine, it's the clutch, it's the brakes, it's the accelerator, it's the paint as well that goes on top of it. And the engineers are really focused on what is going on in under the hood of the car. And we should always endeavor to build what we do as scalable and flexible as possible, and we do it at the start, not at the end. That means that if we need to extend code or extend services or I think that the point I'm trying to make is if you build it architecturally sound, the future is so much brighter because there's so much more than you can actually do with your platform.
So there will always be overlaps, but it's all in the way you manage it.
How we manage it, and there's also that distinction here. We spoke a bit about the payments, for example. There's a whole world.
There's a whole world in payments, and I think also that's a question that a lot of people might ask themselves.
Yeah.
But when there's a deposit failure, how do you actually go about understanding what happened? How do you explain it?
It's an area of the business that I will admit I probably also wildly underestimated. So, I've worked with what we were trying to build, and I say trying because it was a little bit painful, is a payments orchestration platform, and that we have that in-house. But if you look at all of these transaction types and then their life cycles, there's so many different scenarios. And the different scenarios from different payment providers as well. Like, how do they handle a deposit transaction? What timestamps did they apply? Is it on server time, or is it there's a bunch of stuff happening there that I'm not even that familiar with, because it's a whole ecosystem of itself. What we can do as a platform provider is we can make sure that our APIs are sound, that we have responses to the requests that are coming in from the PSP. So we do analysis on that level, but where it becomes difficult is the acquirer, the bank, those side of things. It becomes very, very complicated. We can see error messages related to the players which they pass to us. And I've actually, I've gone into that granularity to check individual players' transactions to understand what actually happened and analyze these things. Because it could be insufficient balance, it could be he has a deposit block, or there was a KYC error from the bank that was passed to us, so we couldn't take the transaction. And again, it kind of boils back down to the relationship that you mentioned earlier, not only with our clients but also our suppliers.
Yes.
And again, the same kind of approach. Like, I will sometimes go to suppliers and ask them questions, and I need to make sure that they understand that I'm not trying to play a lane game, or I'm not trying to throw accusations around or something like that. I'm simply trying to determine, is this working as intended or not?
Of course, and you have to work together.
Yes, exactly. That is the key. Because if I come in guns blazing and I'm complaining about everything, they're just going to put their walls up and say there's no problem here. But
exactly, and communication is key, because if you think of areas like compliance, licensing, sometimes commercial goals of operators clash with regulations of Asians. So how do you make that balance?
I think that it's always kind of like going back to the core of the business and not being afraid of all of the implications that regulations brings with you. I've always been more of a person to, let's communicate that to the customer. Let's make sure that that information is available. They understand why we are doing this. We make a little pop-up and an extreme transparency towards the players. Like, listen, we're running a normal casino, but it's in line with the regulations.
Of course.
And if they would still like that product offering, they will still come back. So it's a tricky one. You want to make money, of course. We want to have commercially viable businesses, but at the same time, we need to comply. That's it.
And before you go, I want to talk about a success story, a recent success story of one of your clients. WheezyBets.
Yes.
So you've been working with WheezyBet for about a month. They generated 1 million euro in bets.
Yes.
In their first month with you.
It was thank you very much. It was a lot of work, I'm not gonna lie. I think the beauty of it was that they kind of aligned on a strategy which we had already set to do. And when we were introduced to them, I was kind of like, they're doing the same things.
You were meant to be.
Yeah, it was kind of meant to be in a sense. And, they came in with a lot of passion, with a team in place as well. And, I find it healthy to have a bit of a push sometimes as well. It shows the desire, it shows the motivation, it shows that they really want to achieve this, and they wanted to achieve it just as much as we did. So I'm very happy that it worked out. I'm happy that it was a success story. I'm cautiously optimistic always because, it's 1 or 2 months. We need to see how the business will continue to grow and how they will continue to operate, of course.
It's a very good signal in the beginning.
Absolutely. It was quite a successful story for us, and hopefully many more to come.
Well, that's all we wish for you. Phil, thank you so much again for taking part in this conversation. We learned so much today, and we would love to welcome you again on the podcast.
Perfect. I'd love to have the opportunity again.